started. And just a reminder that I'm recording and will post this recording on YouTube, and that what it shows is what's on my screen. So if you don't want your face to be seen, then turn off your video. Yeah. So that's all I have control over. Okay, so I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint, and I have posted, maybe I won't pull it up yet. I have posted the PDF of the PowerPoint on the website. Has everybody found that? Or anybody not been able to find that? Okay, let me see if I can get my stuff going here. Share my screen. Okay, so can everybody see my screen? Calvin Hobbes on the front?
Yep.
Okay. What I didn't realize last time is that I need to make this smaller. Otherwise, it actually shows up on the, there. So I've reduced everybody to a corner in my slides, which feels odd. Anyhow, so one of my very favorite cartoon authors has always been David, I don't know who, I can't remember his last name. Anyway, that writes Calvin and Hobbes. And so Calvin says, if you ask me, these assignments don't teach you how to write. They teach you how to hate to write. And then he says, deadlines, rules, how to do it, grades. How can you be creative when someone's breathing down your neck? So I say that tongue in cheek. I don't, because I want this to be a good writing experience. And so I'm going to try and be as explicit as I can in terms of my expectations. And by the way, interrupt me anytime if you have a question, please. So Calvin Hobbes on my second slide says, Calvin says, it's a writer's block. You put it on top of your desk and then you can't write there anymore. Don't get in too much of a writer's block is what I'm asking you to not do. And I'm asking you also to organize your paper in the following way. So some suggested headings are to an introduction, and then the frames or lenses. So for each one of the frames or lenses to have a heading with that title, and then a summary or conclusion, whichever you feel like you're going to write the best. And some people write different ways. I suggest starting with this as your outline, and then putting pieces under each part as you go, and then coming back and writing those. Here's what I would like for you to cover in each one of the sections. So in the introduction, state the purpose of this assignment. You know, what is it why are you writing this paper? And then to introduce the concept of using frames or lenses, and then a brief overview of each frame lens. And that brief overview will be 1 or 2 sentences, and then a short summary of the movie. So if you looked at the PDF, I state exactly what I'm expecting in terms of summary of the movie. We'll go over that here in a minute. So Linus says to Snoopy, good luck with the second sentence now that you've written your first one. So it's in your introduction paragraph, you should clearly state what the purpose of the assignment, what you want to accomplish. So one example is in this paper, I address the 4-frame lenses, the 4-frame lens approach to understanding organizations, leadership, apply each lens to identify organizational and individual issues from the movie. Or, you know, you can state something like an example is 4 frames will be explored individually in the course of this paper. So you're just telling people what you're going to tell them in the paper. And then you'll tell them in the paper, and then the conclusion or summary will be what you told them in the paper. For your movie summary, include these pieces. State the movie's premise in your own words, please. The movie is about what? What's the major storyline from your point of view? We all know what the movie's about, but this is this general, it'll be 1 paragraph long. You can maybe outline what the major characters are going to do in the movie, or what they do in the movie, what happens. You know, what are the major plot points of the movie? So I give you an example, and describe the emotional development of the characters, because that may be something that that'll be pertinent to writing this paper. Then for each frame or lens, because it's can somebody remind me if I stated a number of pages for this? I think 10 or 12 or longer.
I thought it was 20.
Oh, or 20, okay. All right, I'm kind of feeling a little embarrassed now because I don't remember. So for each, because I'm going to come back and talk a little bit about pages again. So for each frame or lens, you should take about 1.5 or 2 pages. And in each one of these areas, some of your frames or lenses will be longer than others, but they should, take at least 1.5 pages. And then to cover 1 to 3 concepts per frame. What I'm looking for is an average of 2. However, if you found that the structural lens really wasn't your lens of choice and you didn't understand it that well, cover 1 concept there, and then cover 3 concepts in the human resource trifocal frame. You may want to cover 1 for each one of the areas that covers. So I'm looking for an average of 2. And you can kind of divide that up how you want. Maybe that 2 of the lenses you only have 1, and then you add, then for the other 2 you have 3. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think, and to clarify, I think what you told us was no more than 20 pages.
Thank you. Okay. So within each one of those sections, to define and explain the lens or frame, to introduce and explain the concept. And this is the exact reason why I've had you take annotated notes all semester, because you should be able to go right back to your annotated notes and look at the concepts that you've covered and pull the concepts that you really understand that you've seen in the movie. So pull those back up. Most of your work should have already been done from those. And then describe the situation or explain the situation or the issue from the movie that you're going to apply that concept to, and then connect them and explain how that informs that issue, how the authors talked about it should be this way, but in reality, here's what happens in the movie, which makes it an issue. So I'd like for you to do that. So you may only have to describe the situation or the issue once, or you may need to describe it in a little bit different way if the 2 concepts that you're applying are quite a bit different. I'm going to pause and see if people have questions.
So would a good strategy be to go back and look at those other assignments and maybe expand on what we wrote in those and then tying it into the movie, or do you not want it to be too close to those assignments?
No, you know what? If you did a beautiful job in those assignments, by all means, don't go back and reinvent the wheel.
Okay.
Go back and really look at the stuff that you understood well and that you kept thinking about. Oh my gosh, I see this happening in the movie. You've done most of the legwork. This is where you're going to go through and apply that legwork.
Okay, great.
So, this is what I just said, right? Use concepts from your annotated notes. Use French and Raven's bases of power to explain where you see it, how you see it. Use Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team, for the HR trifocal frame. Use Shine's levels of culture if you're going to be talking about culture. Use the task maintenance piece from the HR, the Model 1 versus Model 2. I mean, all of these, any of these, this is why you learn this throughout the semester, because remember, organization development, that's plan, change, and organization to improve it. And in order to know how to improve it, you first need to know how to determine where the issues are, or to see those issues, and that's why we've looked through them through each one of the different lenses or frames. What's important to make sure that you do, if you're just pulling from your annotated notes, to please make sure that you found the original source or as close to the original as you can. So if you've written down the foundational author, do a good look in the library online to look for that author and the concepts related. Chances are that person has written something. If not, look in Google Scholar. But your source should really be a reputable source. And if you have a lot of trouble finding concepts that way from the foundational authors, give me a shout and I can see if I can help you. What's really easy to do, I found in writing these papers, is to put your opinions or your judgments as you go through. So I'm asking you to keep these to yourself. So opinions and judgments sound like this, like Andy believes this. Well, we don't really know what Andy believes. Or Miranda did this because. I mean, that's our opinion. Or Nigel, right? Nigel. Nigel, thank you. Nigel's actions made Andy feel this way, where again, we don't know this. Judging because of Miranda's bad leadership, something happened, that's a judgment. Since Nigel is a wimp, again, that's a judgment. So that's what these look like. Whereas what I really want you to do is to observe and report. So it's the idea of reporting what you've seen in the movie. Sounds like this. Andy acts mostly as if, or it's feasible that Nigel is trying to do whatever, or Miranda's reaction is to do something. So you can describe what you observe, not the trigger that something that gets to you. So it's the emotional versus the practical way of saying something. That's the body, and then you have some summary or recap or a conclusion, however you view that best fits, to put that in your heading. So make another statement about the purpose of your study and how you met that purpose, how you went about doing it. Summarize the body of the paper. Any final thoughts, advice, or suggestions that you have. And so you don't need to, in the final thought, advice, or suggestion, you don't need to state, well, here's what I suggest or would do in terms of a long laundry list of stuff from an organization development standpoint, because if we're looking in the reader, this last part, and you're reading about interventions. So you might suggest something in general, but you don't need to go into detail. I encourage you to go to the online writing laboratory, which is AOLL, and to double check that you're writing in APA format. The general format is what I'm asking you to write these papers in. Do not include an abstract. It says you need to include an abstract. So no abstract. For this, you'll have a cover page. And make sure that you pay attention on how to do in-text citations, and then the reference list. And then make sure that you note how to cite online lecture notes and presentation slides that I've done. And then I give an example of, this is a book. And then I give, so even in the syllabus, I made a faux pas on the citation for a Bowman and Deal book. I thought that, I assumed that this edition was published by the same publisher as a previous edition, but it's different. It's now published by Wiley instead of Sage, I think was the last one. So just to take note, but I have the correct one listed. This is right here. So you can copy and paste or make sure that you have this down. So you can see if you're adding in, for the cover pages, 1 page, reference list, maybe 1 or 2 pages. In writing this, I would guess that 12 pages may not be enough. And if you find yourself pushing 20 pages or more than 20 pages, you probably need to be more concise in your writing.
So it's 20 max, including everything, the reference lists and citations, and okay.
Yeah.
So if we do something like, the 5 assumptions, do you want an example for every assumption, or just focus on like 1 or 2 of the assumptions to give a situation for each?
Yeah, I would focus on 1 or 2 instead of going over all the 5. Although you might want to briefly introduce all 5, then you may want to go into more depth, the 1 or 2 that you're going to cover, and then use that for your situation. But you don't have to do, my expectation is not that you'll do all 5. I'm not going to read this slide to you, but what I've done is I've kind of broken it down in colors. It's just to show you different parts. And don't, so while this is an example, this is actually an example from, what I did was I put in names from The Devil Wears Prada, but this is actually the situation, and what it talks about here is from The Office. So to just make sure that you know that these don't apply to our movie. So 1 vertical coordination issue, structural, manifesting in a situation was the use of authority. So then go over what authorities, what that means. And then when authority is undermined or mismanaged, it leads to, so this is the issue. And then describe what Miranda did. And this behavior then implies what? That Emily is trying to create, blah, 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 blah. So, and then by doing this, here's kind of the result of that. So this is just one example of how you would apply the concept to an issue and explain it. But know that it's using examples from The Office with names from The Devil Wears Prada. Questions about that? Okay, so just one of my pet peeves, writing, and I write like this on my first drafts, and then I go back, and it's something that jumps out at me. So it's just a Holyoke pet peeve, is that when people start sentences with this, and they don't explain what this means. So an example, he tells Andy he's playing, of course, and when Andy questions this assumption, Nigel pretends he didn't say it. This seems to humiliate Andy in the process. This what? I always ask myself. Whereas if he tells Andy he's playing, of course, and when Andy questions this assumption, Nigel pretends he didn't say it. This questioning seems to humiliate Andy. So it's just one of my pet peeves, but be explicit about what you are referring to when you say this in the next sentence. And then notice that Microsoft Word will tell you that the word Bowman is misspelled. So feel free to add that to your spelling and not to, because it's such an easy name to misspell. So make sure that you are spelling names correctly. Schein, if you're citing Edgar Schein, his name is one of those other names that Microsoft Word doesn't usually recognize and tells you that you're spelling it wrong. So that's one thing. And then make sure that even though I've covered something in a PowerPoint or Bowman and Deal have talked about it, that you make sure that, because I don't in my PowerPoints, you can cite me, but I'm not the foundational author to any of the concepts that I've talked about in the slides. And most of the time, Bowman and Deal will send you in a direction. They'll talk about the foundational authors. So then I end with another Calvin and Hobbes, because I was all about them not too long ago. I used to hate writing assignments, but now I enjoy them. I realize that the purpose of writing is to inflate weak ideas, obscure poor reasoning, and inhibit clarity. With a little practice, writing can be an intimidating and impenetrable fog. Want to see my book report? And Hobbes reads it, The Dynamics of Interbeing and Monological Imperatives in Dick and Jane, a study in psychic transrelational gender modes. And Calvin says, academia, here I come. That's the end of my slideshow. So I think I have to stop. Did I stop scared? I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Is that correct? Okay. Questions that you have now?
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to jump in that I don't know if people use Grammarly, if you've seen like the commercials and things for that. That's an extension you can get on Chrome. It's an app. It's really useful. It catches a lot more mistakes than words. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If anyone hasn't tried it, give it a shot. It usually catches a lot when we're doing like these big assignments. I found it's been really helpful. So just wanted to add that.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Others. How are you feeling about writing the paper then? Because most of it should really be done. It really ought to be kind of a putting together of the pieces.
Yeah, I feel better once I just started doing an outline today, and it was easier than I thought, because I took those concepts that I knew really well. I pulled the ones that I knew really well, and then started to pull scenes and things that I thought went with it. And so once I did that, it was like, oh, okay.
Awesome. And that's exactly what I want you to do. And I think that's a good place to start in the concepts and the ones that you understand really well, because usually then you can go after watching the movie and say, okay, this fits here. Yeah, good. Other thoughts or comments or ideas?
I had a question about resources that are online resources with a DOI where you can't find the DOI. Does that mean it's probably not a good resource to use and you should move on? Or because I think you said earlier at a different time not to use the links that go directly to the journals or the articles and things like that. So I was wondering kind of what the proper practice would be on that.
So that's a good question. Let me see if I can pull up an example.
Okay.
Because a lot of people, especially when they've been on the library sites, will click that and say retrieved from.
Yeah.
But really, you want that to be a live link. And if I clicked on your thing that starts out with a library, I don't get there.
Right. Okay. I guess to put it another way is if you have a resource like that and you absolutely don't have the DOI, are you out of luck? Should you move on, or is it still okay sometimes to use the retrieve from links, I guess?
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again, and let's walk through one of these.
Okay.
I can get here and decent.
And I don't know if I'm getting into the weeds right now, so I apologize.
No, I want to be able to, so I'm going to come back and ask you a question here. I will, I'm just figure out how to do this again. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And I'm not going to be on the library, but let's say you found somebody to tell me a concept from art class, and maybe even an article. Where's an article that you found?
French and Ravens, we want to go with that.
Okay.
Basis of social power.
Okay. So this is quite an old, but this is the original citation. It's 1959. And it's actually in an edited book. So you won't have, because it's from an edited book, you won't have a DOI anyway. But can you see this right here that I'm getting ready to highlight?
Yep.
This is not the perfect citation for this, but it's a lot closer than what you find on the library. Because this is in a classics. So that's not a great example, though. Let's pick another one. Let's see. If I just put in bases of power, and I'm going to scroll down and find a newer article. So I'm going to look at this one, the bases of power and power interaction model of interpersonal influence. So this is something that may have been found in that political lens. So even if I click on this citation, this is a pretty close citation, but it's probably missing, which this one's missing the DOI. So what I would do then, or here's how I do it oftentimes, is, I can't do that, is I'll take and copy this as much as I can. And what I'll do is copy that into up here, but I'll also state DOI and then copy. So if I get here and I can click on it, this is usually where I'm going to find my DOI, even if the full, even if I don't have access to full article. So you can see here, here's the DOI.
Awesome.
And you can copy and paste that.
Okay. Yeah. I hadn't tried it that way, so that's good to know. Okay.
So Google Scholar is great for that. It helps with the citations, but also if you just type in DOI and open this up, they're really easier to find than originally thought.
Awesome. Okay. Great.
Any other questions since I'm in here right now that others have about citations or something they want me to look up? When you're quiet, I think that you understand everything.
I know the one thing I had difficulty finding other resources for was the core assumptions for the symbolic cultural frame. Finding other articles other than, they usually took me back to the text for Bowman and Deal. Some maybe refer to them, but it was pretty minimal.
Okay, can you give me one of those assumptions and maybe we can see if we can find it?
Or I'm trying to think. The other one I was looking at day 2 was it was a different one. I looked at the overload and underuse. That was part of, I can't remember the name of them.
For the structural lens? No, it was.
Yeah, it was under structural, actually, I think.
So yeah, there's our Bowman and Deal. Bowman and Deal. This one goes way back to 1967. No, this book. I think that's not about real organizations, but rotator cuffs.
Yeah, actually, I found more information. It was regarding healthcare systems and nursing.
Okay. So that's probably not, so you can always do like minus nursing, so it won't pull up anything nursing related. So I'm going to look at this one, I think. So this is a conference paper. Dynamics, this might not be intelligent support organizations, activities. Types of properties and entities, this might not be. So this is probably not a very good article. So what I might do is also put quotes around this, overload versus underuse. And that didn't help. If I put this, is it underuse? Is that the correct word?
I don't have my notes with me. I believe so.
Because it's kind of odd that it won't even pull up Bowman and Deal.
Let me look for a sec. I think I have it.
And it's structural.
Underuse and overload.
Yes. Is it and?
Could do versus.
Boom, that's it.
Yeah, those are the ones I got to.
So yeah, you know what? Because we're not finding somebody else, my guess is that that's from Bowman and Deal.
Okay.
Yeah. Something else that you might have questions about. I think, did I give you French and Ravens? I know we looked it up this evening just now, but did I give you the correct? I think so, at some point I provided a correct citation. But do I just need to do that? Because I know I've looked it up. And somebody asked me, and I'm working on getting, if you wanted to cite our reader, then I'm getting the correct citation to that as well.
I don't remember about the French and Raven one, actually.
Okay, I'll double check because I'm pretty sure that I have it and post that.
Yeah, because that was one I was looking into too.
Okay, great. All right, anything else? So I'm going to do that right when we get off here. I'm going to do French and Raven and this one. So if there's another one, will you let me know, please? Because usually there's 2 or 3 of them that people really struggle with that aren't easy to find. Okay, have a fun break. Enjoy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Talk to everybody soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.